This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia? This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia.
Good morning. Good morning. And welcome everyone to this subcommittee meeting, Education Subcommittee of Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. And thank you for being here this morning. We are getting an early start for the Education Subcommittee for the 2026 session. Today's agenda will include our traditional review of the SHEV budget proposals and requests from the Council of Presidents. Virginia's higher education institutions are nationally recognized and strongly supported by Virginia's citizens. That's Senator Lucas. As we discussed at the annual meeting, they are one of the biggest components for the Commonwealth, scoring highly on being the best state for business. However, there have been recent actions at multiple institutions by their board members that could endanger the world-class nature of these institutions. In addition, these actions could have both direct and indirect financial impacts. Therefore, today I have asked both VMI and UVA to present to the subcommittee with the blessing of our chair, Senator Lucas, whom you just heard, who is joining us virtually. We have also invited Senator Deeds to join us. Unfortunately, the rector and vice rector of UVA were unable to attend today. Therefore, we are arranging for their attendance at a meeting prior to the start of the 2026 session in January. I also anticipate that additional institutions will be invited to that meeting. So we will now turn our attention to the agenda, and I will ask A. Scott Fleming, Executive Director of SHEV, to come forward with his presentation.
And members of the committee and members of the General Assembly. It's wonderful to be with you this morning, and Madam Chair, I would agree with your sentiment that the institutions in Virginia really are world-class. Often I have an opportunity to speak about Virginia's higher education system, and if we are among the best in the country, that does make us really among the best in the world, and I think it's important that we work to preserve that. I wanted to highlight just a little bit of data. I know that members of the committee will have seen the staff retreat slides, which were comprehensive and incorporated much of the SHEV data. So happy to go through this in more depth if those particular slides were not fresh in your memory. But enrollment in Virginia has continued to improve and increase. We're not talking about massive increases year over year, but we are talking about steady 1% to 2% increases year over year since the COVID downturn. So enrollment has continued to increase. There have been minor reductions in enrollment, and I'll get to this in just one moment, in graduate student populations, and that seems to be where enrollment might be struggling. Just to get to the point on that, where the impact seems to be felt most acutely is on the enrollment of international students. So since fall of 2024 to fall of 2025, we have seen a decline in graduate international student enrollment. Some institutions have felt much stronger impact percentage-wise, and other institutions that enroll fewer international students have obviously not been as impacted. But on balance, graduate international student enrollment is down, and undergraduate international student enrollment is up, is actually increased year over year, which was not what we expected when we collected the data. So those institutions that have a high percentage of graduate international student enrollment are going to feel this more acutely, as I mentioned. Institutions in Northern Virginia, for example, are going to have a much higher than the 13% average decline, but that is something that we will have to wrestle with as a Commonwealth. Is the international students tend to be full freight, they pay full tuition, they bring with them considerable additional economic resources when they enter the Commonwealth to study, and so the reduction or the decline in international student enrollment will absolutely have an impact on some of our public four-year institutions. So I wanted to highlight that data. In terms of SHEV, our council, and our recommendations, I won't go through each of these in detail, but I provide the chart for you as a reference point. Obviously, one of the bigger factors here is how we continue to maintain as low an increase in tuition and fees as we can. Obviously, the combination between state support and tuition is a longstanding partnership, and the state's commitment to fund 2/3 of the operating expense of the public institutions. We've seen that decline slightly year over year for the last several years. even with additional state support. And so one of the recommendations the council has made is to try and increase support for the public institutions and as an effort to reduce potential tuition increases under what we categorize as affordability and access. Also, we would like to see additional increases in undergraduate need-based financial aid and the tuition assistance grant program, which if I were to just comment on the TAG program for a moment, I know we have in our audience here representatives of the private institutions in Virginia. I feel like that is one of, and the data does support this, is one of the advantages that Virginia has in keeping Virginia students in the Commonwealth, is that it becomes much more affordable for Virginia students to attend Virginia institutions with support of TAG resources, TAG grants. So the council did advocate for a $50 increase per year, so that would translate to $50 in the first year, $100 in the second year. That is a reasonably substantial percentage of the total recommendation that the council made, but I think it's important to try and maintain the level of state support for private institutions in the Commonwealth. At the same time, we are looking at continued demand for the Workforce Credentialing Grant. Demand, and I'm sure you've heard from the community colleges, this has been a tremendous success in terms of both the enrollment and the outcomes. We have produced an annual report on that for the last couple of years, and we do find that individuals participating in that, on balance, see substantial increases in wage earnings after completion of the program, and that the cost of the program, because it's shared between the state, the individual, and the institution, has attracted national attention for how we operate that program. And so given the continued demand and the opportunity to incorporate new credential programs into that program, the council has recommended additional support for the Workforce Credential Grant Program. A few of these others we have perennially, easy for me to say, perennially advocated for expansion of the mental health pilot. Mental health has surpassed affordability as the #1 reason that students drop out of college. And so expanding support for students and their mental health is increasingly important for the council, and we would like to see continued support, not just of the pilot program, but potential expansion of that program as well. I do make reference to this in the table here. It's referred to as pathways. I'll speak to that in a second, but the potential impact of a direct admissions program is something that Virginia has experimented with. A number of our institutions participate in direct admissions programs with other third-party commercial vendors. Common App, College Board has announced an initiative. Niche is another commercial provider that offers direct admissions to institutions within their portfolio. It is the council's belief and my belief that a Virginia-specific direct admissions program for both public and private institutions would be immensely beneficial for Virginia students, would also help reduce costs, and I'll spend a little bit more time on that in a second. But in terms of the other recommendations that you see here, we have a proposed pilot for individuals with some college and no degree. There are about 6 million, if I recall correctly, about 6 million Virginians that have some college but have not earned a credential, which is a reasonably large population of potential students that we could be bringing back into a post-secondary program of study, helping them to complete and then re-enter the workforce with a more advanced credential. For support for the longitudinal data system, you do see we continue to operate that. It is one of our mandated tasks that Chev is responsible for. We continue to operate that. It continues to be a national model. As the system gets older and the size of the data sharing agreements and the total data that we manage increases, the cost of managing that continue to increase just like everything else. And so we have proposed some additional support for VLDS as well as for Chev's operating budget as we continue to receive additional responsibilities from the General Assembly in addition to the 30 charter responsibilities we have in code. We are doing our best to keep pace with those responsibilities, but have found two potential limitations on that. One is our operating general fund budget. The other is the number of employees that we can hire under the MEL limit. We are beginning to see the outer limits of our ability to manage assigned responsibility with current resources. The balance of the recommendations at the bottom are passed through organizations that we work with, the Space Grant, Sea Grant, and the Virtual Library of Virginia. Of those, I'm sure you've heard from them as well. We have a partnership with those in order to manage the funding, and so those recommendations are coming directly from those entities. As a former university library staff, I have some sympathy for the university libraries and for the benefits the virtual library provides in terms of its purchasing power to help alleviate some of the expense of the number of different databases that universities are subscribers to. That effort to create a collaborative purchasing agreement across participating institutions does have a meaningful fiscal impact, favorable fiscal impact for those participants. And so I'm always sympathetic to those requests. A handful of data points. The one-time funding, I understand and have reviewed the material that was presented at the retreat. I understand the fiscal situation that we're in. Obviously, one-time funding is always tricky in terms of what happens with that one-time funding going forward. If it's not replaced or if it's not continued, institutions will experience a funding gap for those activities that were supported. So the council did recommend continuing the one-time financial support under those one-time funding activities. Briefly on the direct admissions program. So we have begun work on a parent and prospective student-facing portal that would create an opportunity for individuals to see what their pathway is through post-secondary education into the workforce. And as you see from this graph, a number of other states are already at work creating direct admissions programs. We have so far not done this. We are hopeful that we can get a direct admissions program up in time for the 2026 enrollment cycle, so the fall of next year. If we were able to do that, looking at some of the other states that have done this, historically, Indiana, Idaho, Georgia have all seen pretty significant increases in in-state enrollment as they've gone to a direct admissions program. It reduces friction for the student, it reduces the expense of marketing to students in-state, and it provides an opportunity for individuals who may not have considered Virginia institutions to attend Virginia institutions. So for a relatively, what I think is, in terms of an initiative, modest amount of support, we think we can have a pretty significant impact on in-state Virginia enrollment. On the Pell Initiative for Virginia, and I'll go through these next couple of things relatively quickly, but just to show the impact of the Pell Initiative for Virginia, obviously, was to increase enrollment and retention or completion of Pell eligible students. You can see from the 2020 to 21 award year to the 23-24 award year, you have an increase. So at the same time enrollment has increased, you've seen an increased proportion of Pell eligible students. So at least on one of those two metrics, the Pell Initiative of Virginia is already demonstrating an impact. Every institution, as you'll see, has different objectives. Some are looking at enrollment, some are looking at completion, some are looking at both. But over the last couple of years, you've seen the amount of resources dedicated to this. The first data from the 23-24 school year is the initial cohort, essentially. It's the first time that you would have seen any impact from those funds. As we get through 24 and 25 into 26, you will see continued impact, not just on enrollment, but also on the retention and completion of Pell eligible students. As you can see here, total initiatives supported now approaching 500, and as was required under the budget language, is all institutions, public institutions, will have completed an institutional barrier review by December 19th. So we are on track to do that as well. One question for consideration is whether our private institutions who enroll almost half of the Pell eligible students in Virginia have a role to play here, and that is not something that the council addressed, but it is certainly a question, I think, as we look at the enrollment across Virginia. A second program for which we have some responsibility, the Innovative Internship Program. Since the program had a fairly significant increase in funding that took place on July 1, 2024, the grants that we've issued to institutions, and from what we've seen, that participation in credit-bearing internship courses from the 23-24 to the 24-25 school year, according to the preliminary data, grew by almost 30%. And so that does appear to be having a favorable impact on the ability and the availability of students to participate in those programs. The limiting factor for internship participation still continues to be the availability of internships themselves. Full-time paid internships are challenging to find, challenging to create. The Economic Development Partnership has responsibility for, as of July 1 of this year, has responsibility for engaging with employers. Our engagement with institutions to ensure that institutions and students are ready to participate. One of the questions to consider as well is how we account for work-based learning in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So a full-time paid internship is certainly the high watermark for work-based learning, but there are a number of activities, including A great example that I like to cite at Virginia State University, freshman students participating in a 40-hour project, a real project with a real Fortune 500 employer, IBM, and they engage with real-world problems that they work to solve with peers who are working for IBM. It's a great example of a work-based learning activity that is not a full-time paid internship, but certainly is preparing students with real-world practical experience. A few of the data points of what we're doing, which I'll just mention briefly, but we've awarded a number of grants to institutions that incorporate data capture and incorporate the capacity building, and in addition to the credit-bearing internship courses that students participate in, a number of internships that are not captured as part of that data set. We wanted to provide support for institutions to capture that as well, which we've now been able to do successfully at 12 different institutions. Just highlighting a couple of success stories here. George Mason, Old Dominion, Longwood, Virginia Commonwealth, and William & Mary all have double-digit percentages of students who are participating in credit-bearing internship courses, and we're able to capture that data among private institutions as well. So Shenandoah, Marymount, Hollins, Ferrum, Randolph-Macon, Roanoke, Emory and Henry, and Eastern Mennonite, which I understand is a small school, and so percentages may be somewhat skewed, but they also all have double-digit percentages of students participating in those credit-bearing internship courses. Finally, in terms of our statewide strategic plan, the council has met a number of times this year. We went through an exhaustive effort to try and capture input from over 1,000 different data points, including a number of regional hearings that we held to capture the perspective of parents, students, university administrators, business, and others all across the state. I think we had 15 different in-person sessions and a couple of virtual sessions, and where we have come out in terms of the goals for our revised statewide strategic plan for higher education are these 3 goals: ready, responsive, and relevant. So for the first time, we are not making explicit reference to access and affordability. That's certainly assumed within the statewide strategic plan, but we are trying very hard to connect the dots between a higher education credential and success in the workforce, where even after a year or more of news articles that suggest higher education is losing its value, my read of the data is that higher education has never been more valuable than it is right now. That, in fact, the students who have not earned a credential, a post-secondary credential, are struggling much more in the current workforce than those who have. According to data from the New York Federal Reserve, even though unemployment rates are rising for every category of employee, students aged 24 to 31 who, according to the New York Federal Reserve data, who had a college degree were more likely to be employed than those who didn't. And so I'm sure you are hearing, I'm sure your Google feed is full of articles about higher education, just like mine is, arguing that it has become too expensive, less relevant. Those are directly in opposition to the data, and that is what we are hoping to focus the strategic plan on, is the value of higher education. So my final slide is just on federal updates, which I'm happy to answer questions about, but I'm not sure that we need to spend the committee's time on these specific updates, but like I say, I'm happy to answer questions. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I am available for questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Senator Deeds.
back at the Pell Initiative or Virginia slide, I want to make sure I'm reading this right. 12.9% of the students at William & Mary are Pell eligible.
As of, correct. That's
Okay,
as
so
of,
that whole column is a percentage of students
that's right.
for that particular school. Okay, thank you.
I have a question about Fast Forward. Does that come under your auspices?
So we work with the Virginia Community College System. We administer the funds in partnership with VCCS. So yes, but it's a shared responsibility.
Okay, because I didn't see anything here with regard to that.
Well, Fast Forward is the workforce credential grant. So as we talk about the workforce credential grant, Fast Forward, it is the same program.
Okay.
But yes, I should have incorporated that into my description of it.
Okay, thank you.
I trust the staff for the committee will correct some of the errors that I may have made.
Any other questions? Yes, Madam Belcher, you'd like to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question about the proposed pilot for re-enrollment of non-completers. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? Is that for all of our institutions, 2- and 4-year institutions, and is the pilot to redirect those students, particularly if they're in the 4-year institutions and that they have these are students who have not completed or dropped out, to redirect them to that same institution, or is it possibly to direct them to community colleges so that they can get some of the necessary support and resources in order to proceed successfully?
The working hypothesis is that a number of our institutions are already working on re-enrollment for students that enrolled at that institution. What we would like this pilot to do is look at re-enrollment across a range of potential institutions that would be best fit, whether that's a community college or a different 4-year institution than the one that they originally enrolled in, that will align most directly with their preferred labor market outcomes. So short answer would be yes, it's a variety of potential options rather than re-enrollment in the same institution.
I do have one more question. One of the financial aid changes under HB1 is one of the changes to Pell. And that is making workforce changes as it relates to Pell. And I know that you said that the impact on Virginia is not clear at this time, but can you kind of guesstimate the impact that that would have on something like Fast Forward?
Yeah, so from what we understand is that Fast Forward really was the inspiration for those changes in HB1. And the reason that the impact currently is indeterminate is because a lot of the programs that we would assume would be eligible under the federal legislation are not, either because they're too short, not enough clock hours, not enough seat time, or for different reasons they wouldn't currently meet the federal eligibility. So there may be a need to redesign some of those programs as the rules become clear, but the U.S. Department of Education is currently engaged in negotiated rulemaking around the eligibility of programs for that particular provision. So I think in the coming weeks, hopefully we'll have some more clarity. It would be ideal that we would have clarity before session. I think it's more likely that we'll see clarity midway through session, but things will become a little bit clearer in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one additional, I don't know if this is even a question because I don't think we have any clarity right now, but the recent federal changes to the definition of what is a professional degree and the impacts that it's going to have, do we have any sense on the impacts that it's going to have on Virginia, on the number of students, on the institutions that serve these very vital and critical workforce areas? This is impacting the actual needs that we have here in Virginia.
Yes, I would hesitate to quote any specific percentages, but it's greater than zero of Virginia students that will see adverse impact based on borrowing limits for professional programs. The argument around particular programs and how those are categorized or not categorized as professional has been really at the core of a different negotiated rulemaking process the Department of Education is engaged in. That process has not completed. There are still ongoing conversations, and so I would expect that will continue to be an issue that not just Virginia, we have representatives on that negotiated rulemaking committee, but others will continue to make some noise about as well. So I'd say I don't think that story is at its conclusion yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll now move to an overview on the legislative agenda for the Council of Presidents. Dr. Pino, the Council of Presidents Chair, President of University of Mary Washington.
Thank you, Chairwoman Locke and members of the Subcommittee and General Assembly. I first of all want to acknowledge my Vice Chair, who's unable to be with us today, but President Brian Hempel of Old Dominion University is my Vice Chair, and so he'll be before you next year in this role. I want to thank members of the Subcommittee and the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee for their continued investment in what I agree with Executive Director Fleming, which we believe is to be the best system of higher education in the country. So it is an honor to represent that system before the subcommittee today. I think one of the things that makes Virginia's system of higher education so excellent is its diversity, the diversity of institutions, from community colleges to our flagship land-grant, having an institution that was founded all the way back into the 17th century, the long history of higher education in the state, the HBCUs, the regional comprehensive universities, the military institution that's here today. We're proud of all of them, and we think that they do an excellent job of serving the needs of the Commonwealth. We believe that an investment in higher education has a strong ROI. We are focused on workforce, talent development, but also the fact that an investment in higher education generates increased state revenues. For every dollar invested in higher education, produces a return of almost $2 in state tax revenue. And according to the Weldon Cooper Center's 2023 economic impact analysis, higher education is responsible for 188,000 jobs, generating $3.9 billion in revenue. We acknowledge the challenges that are facing the General Assembly in 2026. We're aware of the $3.2 billion shortfall in our Medicaid program, coupled with the close to $1 billion in K-12 re-benchmarking requirements, that this is going to be a challenging year. And that's not even considering the requirements, the mandatory spending initiatives that you have to consider during this legislative session. But I also want to make sure that we don't lose an opportunity to continue to invest in this important driver for the Commonwealth, our system of higher education. So we ask for continued investments that will allow higher education to keep tuition increases to a minimum. Just like Executive Director Fleming mentioned, our focus is on access, affordability, but also student success. Keeping tuition low is something that all presidents, chancellors, and superintendents are focused on, and your continued support will make that possible. Our biggest priority going into this General Assembly session is to hopefully continued funding that was invested last year during last year's General Assembly session, the one-year funding. On the operational funding, particularly, that helps us keep that tuition low. We also would encourage you to continue to make investments in student financial aid, which I will get to in a moment, and I know that the Senate has been very focused on this issue to provide student financial aid, particularly for our neediest students. But we also had a series of institution-specific initiatives each school received during last General Assembly session. Much of those were focused on workforce and healthcare. I know University of Mary Washington, we were pleased that we got an investment to be able to begin an MSN program, which is important to develop the pipeline of nurses in our region. We have an acute shortage of nurses, and so we are proud to partner with both the healthcare system but also Germanna Community College to produce that. And that MSN program that now has been approved through SHEV this past year will help provide educators as well as practitioners for the region. So we're hopeful initiatives like that at all of our institutions that we will continue to be funded into next year. We're also deeply appreciative for the investment in the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program, commonly referred to as VMSDEP. We're grateful that the General Assembly's investment to this important veterans benefit will continue. It, again, helps us keep tuition low, not only for those students, but for all other students as well. I will mention, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the importance of investing in capital on our campus. And even though Mary Washington last year was not included in any of the projects that were initially funded, the roughly $900 million, I do want to make a case for all of my sister institutions across the Commonwealth that those projects be funded this year. They were subject to the veto last year, and we understand that, but it's important to keep that pipeline moving. We have critical needs, which the JLARC study highlighted last year. Mary Washington was one of the schools that was identified as having a lot of deferred maintenance on campus. And in delay in these projects will only cost the taxpayers more down the road. It will delay projects that need to be done as we continue to move and try to keep our facilities up to date for the students and the faculty who utilize them. So I would encourage consideration of reinstating that funding for roughly $900 million of capital projects across the Commonwealth. Finally, I'd like to talk about the importance of not only access and affordability, those initiatives which all the presidents are behind, and the capital projects which we hope will get funded during this General Assembly session. It's also important to invest in student success. And it's important not only to open the door for students of need, but also to provide them the resources to be successful. And it's one of the reasons why we're so appreciative of the Senate's initiative around the Pell students, the Pell Initiative. I can speak specifically. Executive Director Fleming mentioned across the Commonwealth the various investments that are being made. I can tell you at Mary Washington, it has made a huge difference for those students. And if you look at the Pell-eligible students that are on our campuses, I can tell you I got here roughly a decade ago. And I saw that Mary Washington had fewer than 15% Pell students on its campus. And I felt that that was too small of a percentage, that as a democratic institution, it is important for our public institutions to represent the diversity of the students in the Commonwealth. So I was looking for ways to increase that number, and coming from a school that does not have a large endowment, it's hard to find the resources to support those students who have financial need. But I'm proud of the fact that it might not seem like much for the outsider, but we have moved from under 15% to now roughly 23% of our students being Pell eligible. And a lot has gone into that, including the investments of the General Assembly. And the Pell Initiative, we are able to take those funds and not only to help provide emergency funds. We know, we've done the research. The number one reason why students at Mary Washington do not finish to degree is for financial reasons. They stop out for financial reasons. And a lot of it is emergency funds that they need to access. Sometimes it's merely $500 or $1,000 when life happens, that there are funds available for those students to be able to continue with their education. But it's more than just the funds to pay tuition and fees. It's also creating a support network for those students. And at Mary Washington, the Pell Initiative has allowed us to fund support for what we call the Center for Student Transition, Access, and Retention Services, STARS for short, which is a comprehensive support system focused on financial counseling, experiential learning, and career development for those students. We've also been able to utilize those funds to stand up a Call Me Mister program that is modeled off a Clemson University program to prepare teachers to go and serve in underserved areas. We've also utilized those funds to support Eagles in Flight, which is an early college strategic partnership with middle and high school to help low-income students visualize themselves as future college graduates. These funds have provided, as I mentioned, direct financial support as well to students who are in emergency situations. And I want to thank Executive Director Fleming and Chev for being good partners in allocating those funds and supporting those students who have great needs. It's also important, as Executive Director Fleming mentioned, to continue to provide opportunities. And we are proud across the Council of Presidents all the opportunities we are providing for work-based learning. We know that is now the coin of the realm. It's not just getting a college degree, but it's the opportunity to apply what they're learning in the classroom outside the classroom. And we are proud that we are becoming a leader in this space where we are trying to create opportunities for each and every one of our students to have a paid internship. So we are appreciative of the support we've received, and we hope to continue to get that support for our students. Let me close by thanking you for your commitment to higher education. Your continued commitment helps us support these students. We know that at a time right now, at democratic institutions that we are, that it's important for us to build trust among the citizens of Virginia. And we're proud that even though there's a lot in the news about declining faith in higher education, poll shows that Virginians continue to have enormous faith and confidence in the quality of education of our higher education institutions across the Commonwealth. And we could not do it without your continued support, so thank you. I'm now happy to take any questions from the subcommittee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Are there any questions? Got a quiet bunch there.
Thank you.
So could you talk a little bit, you've talked about the Pell Initiative, and has it been helpful to the institutions not to constrain them by saying you must do it this way, and allow the flexibility that's been offered to the institutions to do it as they feel fit to use those funds?
Absolutely. You know, going back to the comment about the diversity of institutions, we're all in very different places. We serve different student populations. We have different systems and different resources to support students already in place. And so I think it's incumbent upon each institution to develop the plans and the programs that work best for them and their students. And that certainly has been what we've been able to do at Mary Washington. And I know at every institution that's received those funds, they're appreciative of having that flexibility as well.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation as well.
Thank you.
We will now move to an update on institutional leadership and finances from VMI and University of Virginia, starting with Superintendent from Virginia Military Institute.
Madam Chair, distinguished members of the subcommittee, good morning. My name is Lieutenant General Dave Furness. I have the privilege of being the 16th Superintendent of the Virginia Military Institute. I thank each of you for the opportunity to be here today and for the warm reception you and your colleagues have given me since I assumed the role, and for that I am truly thankful. I will meet with Governor-elect Spanberger later today. Naturally, there are many across all of state government that I look forward to meeting in the weeks and months ahead. During my first 10 weeks as superintendent, these engagements have been invaluable as I work to gain the full understanding of the priorities of the Commonwealth and the expectations each of you have for VMI. Growing up, my family moved frequently, eventually settling in Richmond during my final year of high school. After learning about VMI from a neighbor, I applied, but was immediately turned down because I was just not a very good high school student. After a second rejection, I enrolled at VCU, determined to find a way to become a VMI cadet, because I knew that what VMI offered was unlike anything else in the nation. I knew I wanted to be an officer in the United States Marine Corps, and with the influence of my VMI neighbor, I was convinced that VMI was the best place to get an education and prepare myself to serve our nation. When I was finally accepted, the experience was everything I had hoped for and even more. With the help of dedicated faculty members who took me under their wing, VMI transformed me and changed the trajectory of my life. The Institute has shaped every part of my professional life and personal character. The discipline, the rigor, the accountability, and camaraderie I found in barracks stayed with me throughout my Marine Corps career and well beyond. The Institute gave me not only an education, but a way of living, one based on integrity, leadership, service, and an unwavering commitment to the mission. Everything I have done since traces back to those early formative years in Lexington. Therefore, it is an honor of a lifetime to return now as superintendent and to serve the Corps of Cadets in the Commonwealth of Virginia. What I have found upon my return to VMI continues to deliver exceptional results for Virginia and the nation. 97% of our graduates are employed within the first 6 months of graduation. Our commissioning rate for the Army and the Marine Corps leads the nation, second only to their service academies. We commissioned cadets into every branch of service, including the newly created Space Force and the United States Coast Guard. VMI graduates consistently earn national recognition, including 7 Medal of Honor recipients and nearly 300 general and flag officers in the armed forces of the United States. We have a distinguished record of 11 Rhodes Scholars, 2 Gates Cambridge Scholars, 4 Fulbright Fellows, 2 Fulbright Scholars, 1 Marshall Scholar among others. We remain in the top 5 in Virginia in graduation rates, and every one of our academic degrees provides a positive return on investment. In summary, we are an outcome-driven institution committed to excellence. These outcomes are not accidental. They result from a deliberate model, 4 years of leadership development that provides a 40-year return on investment. 4 years in barracks cultivates discipline, resilience, courage, camaraderie, and the ability to lead and to follow. Cadets learn to care for one another, to be accountable, to place mission above themselves. They face rigorous academic demands while navigating the daily expectations of military life. And through all that, they learn that who they are and what they can become. Our faculty are central to this success. As I mentioned, I am living proof of our faculty's investment in our cadets. With an 11-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio, they are deeply committed not just to teaching, but to mentoring, encouraging, challenging, and walking alongside our cadets well beyond their 4 years in Lexington. On a recent walk-around post with my wife, I peered into the windows of our academic buildings well past dinner time. I saw faculty who had returned to post to teach and mentor our cadets outside of normal class time or office hours. I was gratified to see that this same faculty focus on teaching and mentoring was what I experienced as a cadet, still prevails today. That is the kind of impact that defines the VMI experience. One of my greatest joys of my first months as superintendent has been my relationship with the Corps. I see them early in the morning during physical training. I eat with them in the mess hall, and my wife and I regularly host them for coffee and dinner at the superintendent's quarters. They are impressive, motivated, intelligent, diverse in background and ambition, and grounded in the values that have long defined VMI and our great nation. I'm especially proud of our current cadet leadership depicted on the screen here. Some are selected purely by peers, while others have input from senior leaders within the Institute. With me today is our regimental commander and cadet first captain, Devin Azoun. He has an immense responsibility, and along with the first class president, leads a bi-weekly meeting of cadet leaders where he experiences firsthand the mantle of leadership in briefing our senior Institute leaders on plans, operations, and activities of the Corps. I hope you will get a moment to visit and talk with him today. VMI occupies a unique space in Virginia as a state agency, a military college, an institution with a daily system of traditions and expectations. As superintendent, I recognize the need to navigate multiple constituencies and stakeholders. The governor, who serves as our commander-in-chief, the General Assembly, who provides our appropriations and resources, the Board of Visitors, who are my direct supervisory body and who are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the General Assembly, parents and alumni who invest significantly in the VMI experience, and the cadets, who are our mission and our reason for existence. With these constituencies in mind, VMI will always comply fully with state and federal laws while continuing to deliver a strong, leadership-focused program. My experience in the Marine Corps included recruiting initiatives that help secure a general officer corps that matches the diversity and excellence of our republic. I intend to do the same thing of the VMI Corps cadets while I'm superintendent. VMI strives to operate from the center, nonpartisan, steady, balanced, and leading along the center line, as I often say. That is where VMI belongs and where it will remain under my leadership. VMI has had some recent success in the area of socioeconomic diversity through the Pell Initiative funding provided by the Commonwealth and this committee. This support has allowed us to expand access by attracting more Pell-eligible cadets and ensure that VMI remains a place of opportunity for talented cadets from across all communities of Virginia. It is one of the most impactful initiatives we have undertaken, and its results are already evident as we have seen more than a 5% growth in Pell-eligible matriculants and have instituted measures that are expected to secure future success. While access is important, outcomes are what matter, and our Pell-eligible cadets graduate at a higher rate than the current state average. Like all institutions of higher education, we face real challenges in enrollment and affordability. Two areas require particular attention. Assuring VMI remains competitive and accessible by building into base budgets funding to support affordability. And second, the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program, which provides crucial benefits to families who have borne the cost of national service. These programs require stable, sustainable, and ongoing funding to support predictability in operating budgets and for families and institutions budgeting for college. Our alumni support is extraordinary. They contribute 30 to 40% of our annual operating budget, and their dedication is unmatched. But philanthropy alone cannot meet the full scope of our affordability challenges. Looking forward, my priorities as superintendent are recruitment of the very best young men and women of Virginia and the nation, success of the Corps academically, physically, morally, and professionally, good order and discipline and accountability, reinforcing the standards that have long defined the Institute for 186 years, and a deep commitment to stewardship, making the best possible uses of the resources entrusted to us, managed within a framework of transparency and accountability to the cadets, parents, our alumni, the governor, and to you, the legislature. VMI desires to be transparent, open, and engaged. Together, the Board of Visitors and the Institute administration will continue to emphasize clear communication and accountability. I invite you all to visit the post this academic year. Join us in the mess hall and talk to the cadets, walk through barracks, see firsthand what your investment is producing. We also look forward to bringing a group of Virginia cadets to Richmond for Legislative Day in mid-February, a highlight for them and an important opportunity to deepen relationships with the Commonwealth's leadership. In closing, I thank you again for your time, your partnership, and your commitment to higher education and public service in the Commonwealth of Virginia. VMI stands ready to be a reliable steward of resources you provided, a strong partner in developing leaders of character, an institution that reflects the very best of Virginia. I look forward to answering all your questions.
Madam Chair.
Just a moment, Senator Lucas. Thank you so very much for your presentation, and thank you for visiting with me a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Lucas, your question?
No, I don't have a question, just a statement, because I really appreciate his centerline approach and the fact that he acknowledged that the General Assembly confirms the board appointments. That was really refreshing to hear.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Senator Deeds.
General, the 97% employed within 6 months is an impressive figure. How many, your first year, there's significant attrition. I want to know what's your attrition the first year and how that compares to the other military programs we fund at Virginia Tech and Virginia Women's Institute of Leadership.
I can get you that specific data, sir. I know right now, year to date, we have lost 7% of the current RAT class.
Is that typical?
That's in line with averages year to date. What our experience is that frequently coming back from Christmas furlough is a difficult experience for some. So we will lose a little bit more then. We'll do our best not to, but some people have a semester in the books. Hey, I tried it, it's not for me, I'm not going back, and their parents allow that to happen. We hope that they would stay to break out and then become a member of the class of 2030, but that's up to them.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? My question has to do with the role of your board, to whom you are responsible. How do you see that role of your board of visitors?
My relationship to my board?
Correct.
Well, they are what I would refer to as my higher headquarters. They're appointed by the governor, confirmed by the legislature, and they're going to direct me in the daily prosecution of my duties. I'm responsible to them fiscally and for matters of good order, discipline, and accountability. So I have daily interaction with them. I mean, believe me, I get emails from them. I also talk to my president every week. I try to keep them informed what's going on within VMI on post. And so I think that's the way the relationship is now, and I hope would remain in the future.
You mentioned that alumni support is in the range of 30 to 40%.
Of our total operating budget, Madam Chair, yes.
That's significant. Given that percentage, are alumni, I don't want to use this word, how impactful are alumni in discussing issues relative to the operation of VMI?
Madam Chair,
I hope I did that in the right.
yeah, I understand the question, I believe. So, Madam Chair, I will tell you that the great thing about VMI is we have passionate and committed alumni. The bad thing about VMI is we have passionate and committed alumni. So if there's something that is going on in post that they don't agree with, believe me, I'll hear about it. I get emails every day, I get phone calls every day from alumni who are concerned about this or that. I tell them, and my experience has been since I've been on post, is most of what they hear is not backed up by the facts on the ground, what I see. There are certain issues that we have, and I call them first world issues. There are minor tweaks that have to be made to accountability, to good order and discipline, and things like that. But I've been very pleased with what I have seen. I tell them my experiences, and and I'm up at 5 a.m. every day. I PT every morning. I see the cadets out there. I eat chow with them during lunch and dinner about 3 to 4 times a week. So I'm out and about. I'm not in my office very often, and I interact with them frequently. So I have a sense of kind of what their experiences are, so I can help navigate with the Commandant and create the best process to produce the best graduates that we can for the taxpayers of Virginia.
Senator Obershine.
Thank you very much. General, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your comments. To follow up on the questions about board, I had the privilege of serving on a college board for 8 years with a very, let's say, heavy-handed, strong leader, let's say, at James Madison University, Dr. Carrier. And I remember the first meeting of the board that I attended, Dr. Carrier made a point of saying, in my 27 years as president of this university, not once has a single, not one time has a board of mine ever rejected one of my initiatives. Moreover, in my 27 years, not a single dissenting vote has ever been cast by a board member of mine during my tenure as president of this university. And I guess there's a broad spectrum of relations between presidents of universities and boards, ranging from strong control by a president to micromanagement by a board, and maybe getting at the heart of some of the questions. How has your relationship in your relatively short tenure at VMI been with your board? Have they asserted operational control? Have they micromanaged your operation of the university? How has your relationship with your board developed?
Madam Chair, Senator Obershine, it's a good question. I think I received fairly specific marching orders from my board when I was hired, and they wanted me to look at good order and discipline, accountability within the Corps of Cadets. So that's the first things that I looked at when I came on post. I think the way we operate is it's a discussion back and forth. I try to convince them of the validity of my opinions. I keep them informed of what I'm seeing. So I have transmitted to them, like, I hear what your opinions were of the good order and discipline of the Corps of Cadets. It's not to my level of satisfaction, but quite frankly, as a 3-star Marine general, it's never going to be. Okay, you can always be perfect in those things, and we're far from perfect. So we're always going to be working on that and working on the process. And so I just keep them informed, and it's a give and take right now. Again, our board is made up, I think, well, right now, I'm not even sure how many members are on it, but it's supposed to be, I think, 17, and I think 12 of those members are graduates. So when you're dealing with that many VMI graduates on a board, they understand the Institute, but they're also shaped by their 4-year experience and when they went through there. Like what I try to tell members of the board that when I'm discussing a certain issue is different doesn't mean bad. It just means different. And so we're very tradition bound. That's a good thing. I want to maintain that. And sometimes in organizations that value their traditions and their ethos, like the Marine Corps, it's hard for us to get to change and make change. And so if I'm going to make a rudder steer, I've got to make sure that I get everybody on board before I even turn the wheel. And so that's up to me to navigate and to shape those interactions with my board members. And so I view the new appointees, the board that will certainly come in January, getting to know them, defining a working relationship with them, and getting on with the business of making VMI the exceptional place for education that it has always been for the benefit of the cadets.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, ma'am.
We will now hear from, I'm sorry, Senator Lucas had her hand up, and I can't see her hand. Senator Lucas, did you have a question?
I'm back.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think we may have, several of us may have a different view of what centerline approach means. For me, that means more nonpartisan. But I kind of like just hear him speak a little bit on that centerline approach to how he manages the general. Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Senator Lucas, thank you for the question. To me, and I will look at this. So we have, I have federal guidelines that I have to adhere to, federal regulations coming out of the Department of Defense that affect our ROTC departments. We have the largest ROTC department in the nation, okay, of all the services. So we have more students involved than almost any other educational institution in America. So if I'm going to do something that's going to get me cross with the federal government, I got to be very, very careful about that, okay? Because they can impact me in a very negative way. And so if there's also on the other side of the aisle, there's issues that can bring my alumni into a rage that then will impact the 40% of my budget that comes from their philanthropy every year. So I got to navigate these polls very carefully. I think I do that by keeping you all informed, lots of discussions, talks about any kind of initiatives that are going to pull us one way or the other. But I'm looking to stay right in the middle of all those, issues that tend to polarize the American body politic. And I'm going to do my best to keep myself off of the front page of the Washington Post and just focus on cadets and what's good for them and what's good for the institution. That's what I refer to about being on the center line. And if there's obviously more discussions, Senator Lucas, I'd love to sit down and talk to you about that in greater detail.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. We will now turn to University of Virginia Interim President Paul Mahoney.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Chair Locke and the rest of the subcommittee for having me to speak with you today. After difficult and lengthy negotiations, the University of Virginia has resolved federal government investigations through an agreement that will not cost Virginia taxpayers a single cent, that contains an explicit and ringing endorsement of academic freedom, that provides that the scope of our obligations under federal civil rights law will be determined by the courts, and that requires us only to comply with the Department of Justice guidance document that is substantively identical with internal guidance that UVA adopted back in the spring of 2025. This is a great win for the Commonwealth and its flagship university. That is not just my opinion. The Washington Post stated that, quote, "The deal is probably the best the state's flagship school could have hoped to secure," close quote. The Wall Street Journal said that, quote, "The deal appears to strike a balance that will ensure the university obeys the law without coercive overreach," close quote. More recently, The Hill referred to our agreement as, quote, the most tame agreement the Trump administration has yet given a university to end federal investigations against them, close quote. Mindful of the many responsibilities of the distinguished members of this subcommittee, I'd like to take this opportunity to clear up some misconceptions to which you may have been exposed in the necessarily limited time you've had to consider the agreement. I'll begin with the process and timeline, and then move to the substance of the agreement. When I took office on August 11, 2025, the University of Virginia faced 7 Department of Justice investigations. Fairly or unfairly, the DOJ believed that the university had not cooperated with it in the early stages of those investigations. That was the situation I inherited, and certainly not one I would have wished for. It would have been reckless to tell the DOJ, we've done nothing wrong, and so we invite you to investigate us thoroughly. There is a reason that the DOJ's investigations of universities for potential civil rights violations ordinarily result in a voluntary resolution agreement. A full on-site investigation is intrusive and disruptive and led by seasoned investigators with a professional incentive to find wrongdoing. Moreover, while UVA has not admitted wrongdoing, both we and the DOJ were aware of allegations that certain areas within the university were not yet in full compliance with the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard decision. As I took office, we were engaged in an ongoing review of all of our operations to ensure that we would promptly correct any non-compliant activities. I therefore met with the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division shortly after taking office and told her and her staff that we were carefully examining our policies and procedures throughout the university to bring them into compliance. And in light of our efforts, I requested that DOJ close its investigations. DOJ responded by closing 2 of the open investigations. It declined to close the remainder, even after the university provided substantial information about our policies with respect to admissions, financial aid, hiring, and student programs. At that point, our options were to come to an agreement or wait for the DOJ to impose sanctions on us and then litigate. By this time, several other universities subject to investigations had already suffered dramatic losses of federal research funds. Waiting for an enforcement action and then litigating would have been potentially devastating to the university's mission and its financial well-being. The sanctions potentially available to DOJ include immediate suspension or termination of federal research grants, which total approximately $452 million for UVA, through the simple expedient of ordering our researchers to stop work. In the longer term, the government could also have ended our students' eligibility for Pell Grants and federal student loans. As Senator Lucas noted in her letter to me with Senator Surville, there are potentially viable grounds on which UVA could challenge a termination of federal funding. But such a suit would be lengthy and uncertain, and while it was pending, we would be without the federal funds that support life-saving research, including clinical trials that may be the last hope for some patients. We may not like those facts. They may strike us as unfair, but they are facts nevertheless. After losing substantial federal funding, Harvard University sued the federal government and won a relatively quick victory in the district court. But the district court's decision there was heavily influenced by 2 important factors specific to that case. First, the court concluded that Harvard's First Amendment protected speech was a, quote, substantial and motivating factor, close quote, in the government's decision to terminate funding. By contrast, UVA's investigations are related to potential discrimination in admissions, financial aid, and hiring, not to faculty speech or viewpoint. The First Amendment argument would therefore be difficult or impossible to make. Second, the court found that the government had not followed the procedures set out in Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 before terminating Harvard's funding. Title VI's procedural requirements are quite modest, requiring little more than notice and an opportunity to be heard. It would therefore be an enormous gamble to assume that the government would make the same mistake should it take enforcement action against UVA. What would happen if the government followed the correct procedures? What would the university then say to the patients and researchers whose lives would be disrupted permanently? We will follow suit. We will file suit. We hope to win that suit a year or 2 or 3 years down the road. We're sorry to inconvenience you in the meantime. I trust the General Assembly is not so reckless with lives, livelihoods, and the creation of new technologies. I certainly am not, particularly when the alternative is to agree to what we are already doing. For all of those reasons, I believe that signing the agreement was the best option available to us. In fact, we are in a clearly better position than if we hadn't signed. The agreement does not bind us to comply with any and all Department of Justice commands. It binds us to comply with DOJ's July 29, 2025 guidance for recipients of federal funding regarding unlawful discrimination, and then only to the extent that document is consistent with judicial precedent. Should we disagree about how that guidance applies to a specific factual situation, we could challenge the DOJ's interpretation in court. The DOJ could also choose to terminate the agreement, putting us back in the same position as we were before we signed. Critics of the agreement have argued that the DOJ guidance is not binding, and we therefore should not have agreed to follow it. But that guidance, like other federal agency guidance, lays out the DOJ's enforcement position under certain federal civil rights laws. Issuing that guidance put every university receiving federal funds on notice of the circumstances in which DOJ may use its formidable enforcement powers. The DOJ could, and almost certainly would, enforce that guidance against us, whether or not we entered into an agreement with it. The issue is therefore not whether the guidance is binding, but whether it is worth risking a lawsuit that would be costly, risky, and unnecessary. Unnecessary because the DOJ guidance is consistent with our internal guidance. I should also note that the agreement does not require the university to violate Virginia law. The Code of Virginia requires state agencies to, quote, establish and maintain a comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan, close quote. The University of Virginia has done so. The statute further identifies certain best practices that the plan should include. Among other things, these require the university to comply with state and federal equal opportunity and equal pay laws, which of course it will. What we will not do is discriminate on the basis of race or other protected characteristics in violation of Title VI, Title VII, or Title IX. I should also note that the DOJ guidance nowhere states that any program or plan labeled DEI is automatically illegal. Instead, it says that if a program or plan or activity discriminates on the basis of a protected characteristic, then labeling it diversity, equity, and/or inclusion does not save it from illegality. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify our agreement with the federal government, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, President Mahoney. Are there questions? Senator Deeds.
President Mahoney, you took office August 11th. When was the meeting with the Justice Department where the two investigations were ended?
I met in person with the Justice Department, I believe, the first week in September. I then had some follow-up conversations with them by telephone or Zoom call, and then the investigations were closed near the end of September.
And that beginning of September was your initial contact with the Justice Department about these matters?
Other than setting up the meeting, yes.
Okay, and you had no contact with the Justice Department prior to President Ryan's leaving?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay.
I was just a member of the law school faculty, enjoying my time teaching and doing research.
I know that. But you acknowledge that the July 29, 2025 Department of Justice guidance document is not declared of existing law. It's the Trump administration's view of existing law.
That's, to be honest, Senator Deeds, that's an extremely complicated question. The binding law, as far as we are concerned, is the Students for Fair Admissions decision. And just for what it's worth, let me read a little bit from that decision. It says that universities may not simply establish through application essays or other means the regime we hold unlawful today. What cannot be done directly cannot be done indirectly. And indeed, a lot of the Justice Department's guidance is consistent with that concept. It says that universities should not, for example, use application essays, demographic information, or so on, in a way that is intended to discriminate on the basis of race. So I think that, as is often the case with federal agency guidance, it will come down to specific factual situations and what the Justice Department says one can or can't do in specific factual situations.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, President Mahoney, for your presentation. I'm curious about the role of faculty as you were faculty yourself just a few months ago. I'm curious about the role of faculty as we move forward. The Faculty Senate has expressed its displeasure at the direction of the university. It has expressed a vote of no confidence in the rector and vice rector, and I know the issue of shared governance has come up quite frequently in this past year, especially at the university. Moving forward, what is your vision of the role of faculty? How are you working to incorporate their voices and their leadership in institutional decisions, and what role are they going to be playing in addressing some of the deep concerns that have been raised about the Board of Visitors?
Senator Hashmi, thank you for that question. The system of shared governance at the University of Virginia is extremely important. The Faculty Senate and faculty generally play an extremely important advisory role to both the president and the board. We, of course, have a faculty representative, currently non-voting, on the Board of Visitors. I think that it has been tremendously unfortunate that the issues that have been at the forefront during my early months as interim president have involved either litigation or potential litigation and government investigations. By the nature of those things, they are negotiated confidentially. Among other things, if we were to describe the negotiations in detail in any sort of public forum, we might end up inadvertently waiving attorney-client privilege, which would make the government's position all the much stronger. We were able to negotiate what I think is a very favorable agreement, partly because the Justice Department trusted that we were not negotiating against them in public. So that is a source of grave concern to me, but one that I really couldn't alleviate other than by doing what I have done. I've met with the Faculty Senate 3 times in my 3 months as interim president. I have made a commitment to them, and I believe carried out that commitment to share with them all of the information that I'm capable of sharing with them. As soon as we signed the agreement, I agreed to meet with the Faculty Senate, and I gave them a detailed briefing on both the process and the substance of that agreement. I recognize, of course, that in any sort of issue that didn't require confidentiality, it would be better to discuss that with them ahead of time, and I certainly will do that going forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, President. I am concerned with the process of the presidential search moving forward. As we know, with the great distress of the last year at the institution, the idea of a presidential search at this moment is fraught with a lot of challenges and difficulties. The first, and I think critical one, is the fact that you are probably not going to see some of the applications that we would see if the situation was not as complex as it is. There may be quite a few folks who would be seeking the presidency of the institution who are very reticent at this point, who will not be submitting their names, knowing the institutional challenges with the Board of Visitors and with the current situation. Is it in the best interest of the university? And I know this is a question you may not want to answer, but is it in the best interest of the university to actually move forward at this moment, knowing that we have so many difficulties ahead of us in getting, and I'm just focused on the applications, getting the best portfolio of applicants that we need to have in order to ensure leadership as we move forward.
Right. Thank you, Senator. Obviously, the question of whether a presidential search at a particular point in time is in the best interests of the university is one that is committed to the Board of Visitors, and I'm not going to answer for them. I will make a few observations about some of the factual issues involving attracting high-quality candidates. It is, I'm sure, evident to all of the members of this subcommittee that many universities today are facing challenges from the federal government, and if they're public institutions, perhaps from their state governments, that are not completely dissimilar to what the University of Virginia is facing. As Isaacson Miller, which is the search firm that is advising the special committee on the selection of a president, stated, every university has its own challenges. One of the significant challenges that was faced by the University of Virginia is the tremendous uncertainty that was created by the existence of these federal investigations. As I can testify from personal experience, one would step into that situation either knowing that you were going to reach an agreement that would make you the target of criticism, or you would potentially not resolve the investigations and face devastating consequences. That particular uncertainty has been taken off the table. The search firm stated that there was a surge of very high-quality applications right after that agreement was signed. So I am not persuaded that we will not receive high-quality applications. Obviously, the search is confidential. I have no way of knowing who is or isn't a candidate, but at least the search consultant has expressed confidence that we are receiving high-quality applications.
Have Senator Lucas and then Senator Overshaw.
Madam Chair, Senator Hodgman asked my question in part, but I'm just curious to know, that, before they accepted the agreement and then rejected the agreement, did UVA's policies, did they believe that it violated the law before Trump got involved? I've been curious about that all along. Did the university feel that the policies, that any policies had been violated?
So Senator Lucas, I believe the question to be whether there were any legal violations at the University of Virginia before the investigations were opened, or is the question whether we thought that our policies were consistent with federal law?
Madam Chair, I think you stated it correctly the first time. Were there any violations in your view before the agreement was settled, was reached?
So we are still in the process of.
That is the question, Senator Deeds, yes.
Thank you, Senator Lucas, and thank you, Senator Deeds. We are still in the process of carrying out our internal compliance review. I can give you some examples of things that we have concluded we need to look into more carefully. At the time, I guess actually as of this summer, so after the Department of Justice had already opened its investigations, if you were to look at materials written and on the web at our medical school, a number of them referred to student scholarships and programs that selected candidates on the basis of a protected characteristics such as race or sex. Whether that simply was someone didn't update a website or whether that actually reflected the actual decision-making process is something we're still looking into carefully. So again, I want to be clear, the university has not admitted that it violated the law, but I can't say to you with certainty that every single aspect of our operations was in full compliance with Titles 6, 7, and 9. That's just something that I can't go that far.
Well, then I'm just curious then why no one ever brought it up before.
Mr. President, Tim Heafy, I may be mispronouncing his name. Am I correct? He was university counsel under President Ryan?
That's correct, Senator.
And am I correct in, Madam Chair, my understanding that prior to coming to the University of Virginia, He was appointed as United States Attorney under President Obama. Is that right?
I'm afraid that I don't have the particulars of that, Senator Obenshain.
But, Madam Chair, in follow-up to the question from Senator Lucas, I had read that Mr. Heafy, in a public speech, while he was university counsel, made a comment that some programs at the university did cross the line, and he indicated that we have in certain schools or certain departments numerical formulas that were against the rules. Are you familiar with that speech that Mr. Heafy gave? And I'm maybe badly mispronouncing his name.
Yes, my understanding is that Mr. Heafy appeared at a meeting for retired faculty at the university in, I believe it was late summer of this year, and I've seen a clip of that, of his talk at that event that did include the statement that you identified.
Madam Chair, have you discussed that with Mr. Heafy?
I have not.
Okay. Madam Chair, further question. We all know that other universities, Columbia, Cornell, Northwestern, others have entered agreements with the federal government. Is the University of Virginia's agreement similar or dissimilar from the agreements that these other highly publicized university agreements entered with the federal government?
Right. So let me outline what I think are two important differences between the agreement that we reached and most of the other agreements that have been reached. So if we look just at agreements entered into between universities and the Department of Justice, Columbia's requires payments both in fines and other financial settlements of $221 million. Brown's is $50 million. Cornell, $60 million. Northwestern, $75 million. UVA, $0. Our agreement, of course, commits us, as Senator Deeds and I were discussing, to a guidance document, the meaning of which is necessarily going to be fleshed out on a case-by-case basis. Let's compare that to the language in some of the other agreements. I'm going to read from the Northwestern agreement, but this is substantively similar to the Columbia and Brown agreements. Northwestern shall maintain merit-based admissions policies. Northwestern may not, by any means, preference applicants based on race, color, or national origin in admission throughout its programs. Northwestern has removed any proxies for protected characteristics from application materials and requirements. No proxy for racial admission will be tolerated. Northwestern may not use personal statements, diversity narratives, or any applicant reference to racial identity as a means to introduce or justify discrimination. So what you see is that those universities have obligations spelled out in very specific and detailed language, whereas we have simply said we'll comply with a guidance document that is stated in much more general terms. And again, the fundamental principle, as I read it, of that document is you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly.
President, did these other agreements require the imposition of a monitor or placement of a monitor? And is there any similar agreement with the University of
Senator Obenshain, that's an interesting question because if I remember correctly, all of the agreements that DOJ reached prior to ours had an external monitor. And I believe that that is related to the fact that those agreements, again, often had extremely detailed and specific obligations about even academic programs. So I'm just going to look at, for example, and I apologize for reading from these documents, but I think it's important to get the context. This is the Columbia Agreement. It says that Columbia will undertake a comprehensive review of all of its area studies programs, and among other things, they will review the educational programs to ensure that educational offerings are comprehensive and balanced, review all aspects of leadership and curriculum, steward the creation of new programs to address the full range of fields, partner with the Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs in the schools to create a standard review process for the hiring of non-tenured faculty across the university, review the processes for approving curricular changes, and make recommendations to the president and provost about any necessary changes, academic restructuring, or investments that will ensure academic excellence. Now, those are very detailed and comprehensive requirements. And you can see why the government decided rather than oversee that itself, it would require Columbia, at Columbia's expense, and in all of these cases, the monitors at the university's expense, to oversee compliance with those agreements. I think it is fair to say that anyone in an organization that has been subject to federal monitoring, and of course many regulatory agencies impose monitors as part of settlements, will tell you that that is not something they would eagerly agree to. Monitors are very well compensated, so it's expensive, and they have to justify that expense by finding things to complain about, and they typically do. One thing that I find very interesting is that there were press reports for months that both Cornell and Northwestern were negotiating with the federal government, but that those negotiations did not reach the stage of agreement until we signed the first agreement without a monitor. And then Cornell immediately signed an agreement without a monitor, and Northwestern immediately signed an agreement without a monitor. I don't have any non-public information, but my assessment, my interpretation of what happened is that the monitor was the sticking point in those two negotiations. And once they were able to go back to the government and say, look, Virginia didn't get a monitor, we don't want a monitor, that was the thing that broke the logjam and allowed them to reach agreement. Again, just my supposition, but the timing does seem to suggest that.
Madam Chair, so the
Senator Obenshain.
agreement with the University of Virginia involved no fine, no monitor, and no loss of research funds.
That's correct, Senator Obenshain.
Senator Deeds.
President, just to follow up with a couple of questions from Senator Obenshain, just a two-part question. Number one, isn't it true that Tim Hafey was out of the employ of the university in January 2022, 3.5 years before that any statement was allegedly made? And number two, isn't it true that unlike the other universities, your office has to report to the university, has to report to the Justice Department that you're complying with the Justice Department document on a quarterly basis?
Yes, thank you, Senator Deeds. I don't know the dates of Mr. Hafey's employment by the university.
Okay.
I'd be happy to find that for you if it's useful to you. On the second, let me note that the Cornell and the Northwestern agreements have the identical reporting or a presidential certification requirement that our agreement has, which again, I don't have inside information, but my interpretation is that both of those universities concluded that presidential certification was much better than an external monitor.
Thank you.
President Mahoney, I have several questions and comment. My first question has to do with, when were you, the rector and the vice rector, initially notified about this meeting today?
So I heard that there was going to be a meeting and that I and potentially others would be asked to attend it probably a couple of weeks ago. I received a written invitation to appear a week ago today, if I remember correctly.
Specifically, the week of November 12th is the initial notification. We were asked to tell you in writing, and we did so on November 17th. And the rector and the vice rector chose not to attend today because they said that they were not notified appropriately in time. So they chose not to appear today. My next question has to do with question and comment. I think it's disappointing that institutions have been bullied into capitulating to the Department of Justice, and justice is certainly oxymoronic. And I take, I'm sorry. I said I find it disappointing that institutions have been bullied into capitulating to the Department of Justice, and I find the word justice oxymoronic in this day and age, because that department is certainly rogue these days. And I certainly take issue with the idea of seasoned investigators coming out of that department, because that's a very toxic environment that's operating there now. Because many of the seasoned individuals have either been fired or left of their own accord. So what University of Virginia probably would have gotten would not have been seasoned investigators. So my question has to do with, in signing the agreement, does that prohibit the Department of Justice or even the Department of Education from any further imposition into the University of Virginia's governance policies?
So a resolution agreement by its nature resolves the specific investigations that it addresses. So as I mentioned, we had 5 investigations that remain open. And so our agreement has to do with those specific investigations, just as the Columbia Agreement, the Brown Agreement, et cetera, resolved specific investigations. An agency always retains the right to investigate and sanction any future legal violations, or even typically to open investigations regarding past violations that it didn't know about at the time it entered into the agreement. There's no such thing in my 40 years of experience as a lawyer who deals with regulatory agencies as an agency giving any kind of absolution. Agencies do not issue get-out-of-jail-free cards.
So it is quite conceivable that, given recent Supreme Court rulings regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, that the Department of Justice could very well come back to the University of Virginia and say, aha, you did violate something.
It could say that we violated something that is not the subject of the specific investigations that it had already opened, yes.
You cited the Virginia Code 2.2 -602B relating to the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan that requires, under state law, that institutions, agency directors establish comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion plans. Could you be more specific in terms of what the University of Virginia has done in that regard?
Yes, we have a university-wide strategic plan, the 2030 plan, that talks specifically about our goal of having diverse student bodies, both a student body and a faculty that is diverse along all dimensions. And we also instruct in that plan the various parts of the university to take actions to ensure that we will have a student body and faculty that are diverse along all dimensions. As I've said, the thing that I think has changed since that plan was written is the Students for Fair Admissions decision, which I think makes very clear that among the things that we will do to pursue diversity, we will not discriminate on the basis of protected characteristics.
Okay, and you have indicated that University of Virginia has not lost any federal research funds as a result of the agreement that was signed with the Department of Justice?
That's correct, yes.
Could you speak to how you see the role of members of the board in its relationship to to the president of the institution as well as to the wider institution?
Sure. In my view, and I believe this is consistent with Virginia law, the board has two overriding obligations and roles. It selects and oversees the president of the university, and it sets high-level strategic direction for the university. The president, by contrast, is the chief executive officer who is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the university.
Does the board have any role in tenure and promotion decisions or academic programs?
The board is required under statute to affirm all faculty hiring and promotion decisions. That's a matter of Virginia law. So at our board meetings, recommendations come from the provost and president to the board related to faculty hires and promotions.
I'm not sure I heard the answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I would be happy to further.
Does the board have a say in who gets tenured and promoted at the institution?
It must approve those decisions. The tenure process begins with the individual department or school that carries out a detailed examination of the candidate's teaching, research, and service, and solicits feedback from experts outside the university who work in the same field. The department or school then writes a report to its faculty, which then holds a vote, and the dean formally then makes a request to the provost that the person be granted tenure if that vote is favorable. The provost then makes that recommendation to the Board of Visitors, which votes to confirm that recommendation.
likewise for academic programs?
It depends on the academic program. The board, of course, approves the establishment, for example, of a new school. So we, a few years back, established a school of data science. The board approved that. Everyday curricular or programmatic issues that are not large-scale strategic issues like the creation of a school, the board would typically not be informed of or asked to approve.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or issues? No. Thank you so very much for coming.
Thank you.
Any other matters to come before the subcommittee? If not, we will be coming together again in early January to address additional issues prior to the beginning of the 2026 General Assembly session. And so we will see you all once again then. Thank you for being here.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, 1300. Did you know live Senate video is now available at youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.